Behold the ancient styles of Kung Fu. Monkey, Crane, the Mantis, Viper, Tiger, Panda,
Don't tell Monkey.
Everybody was
Jack Black,
Go ahead, Panda. Show us what you can do.
Okay, yeah, I just ate. So I'm still digesting, so my Kung Fu might not be as good as later on.
DreamWorks Kung Fu Panda.
How's that?
What if a clumsy noodle-loving panda was chosen to become the legendary dragon warrior? Dot in today's Cinema Craze video, we'll uncover the full story, hidden facts and inspiring journey behind Kung Fu Panda 2008. Stay till the end to see how Po transformed from an ordinary dreamer into the hero who saved the entire Valley of Peace. Kung Fu Panda is a 2008 American animated martial arts comedy film directed by John Stevenson and Mark Osborne. The screenplay was written by Jonathan Eibel and Glenn Berger, based on a story created by Ethan Reif and Cyrus Voris. The movie was produced by DreamWorks Animation and became the first film in the popular Kung Fu Panda series. Jack Black provides the voice of the main character, Po, a lovable and funny panda. The story takes place in ancient China, where animals live and behave like humans. Po is a big panda who works in his father's noodle shop, but his true passion is Kung Fu. He spends most of his time dreaming about becoming a Kung Fu master and looks up to the famous Furious Five warriors. Even though Po is clumsy, overweight and has no martial arts training, he never stops believing in his dream. Everything changes when Master Oogway predicts that the dangerous snow leopard Tai Lung will escape from prison and return to attack the Valley of Peace. To protect the valley, a special warrior known as the Dragon Warrior must be chosen. During the selection ceremony, Po accidentally finds himself in the right place at the right time and is unexpectedly chosen as the Dragon Warrior. Everyone is shocked by the decision, including Po himself. He is then given the responsibility of learning Kung Fu and preparing to face Tai Lung. The Dragon Warrior is also destined to receive a sacred scroll that is believed to contain the secret to unlimited power. The movie began development in October 2004. At first, the idea was to create a parody that would make fun of martial arts movies. However, director John Stevenson felt that the film would work better as an action comedy with real emotional moments and an inspiring hero's journey. The project was officially announced in September 2005 And the filmmakers worked hard to create a world that celebrated Chinese culture while telling an entertaining story. The music for Kung Fu Panda was composed by Hans Zimmer and John Powell. To make the soundtrack feel authentic, Hans Zimmer travelled to China to learn more about its culture and musical traditions. The composers also worked with the China National Symphony Orchestra, helping create a score that matched the film's epic action scenes and emotional moments. Kung Fu Panda had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival on May 15, 2008, before being released in theatres across the United States on June 6, 2008. The movie was a huge success at the box office, earning over $630 million worldwide against a production budget of around $130 million. It became one of the highest-grossing films of 2008 and the most successful animated movie of that year. Critics and audiences praised the film for its humour, exciting action sequences, beautiful animation, memorable characters, and positive message about believing in yourself. The movie also received several major award nominations, including nominations for Best Animated Feature at both the Academy Awards and the Golden Globe Awards. Because of its massive success, Kung Fu Panda grew into a major franchise. The story continued with several sequels, television series, short films, and other spin-off projects. The first sequel, Kung Fu Panda 2, was released in 2011 and continued Po's exciting journey as the Dragon Warrior. In the Valley of Peace in ancient China, Master Shifu receives an important warning from his wise mentor, Master Oogway. Oogway has a vision that the dangerous snow leopard Tai Lung will escape from prison and return to steal the dragon's scroll, a legendary artifact believed to hold the secret to unlimited power. Concerned about the future, Shifu immediately sends a message to the prison guards, telling them to increase security and keep a close watch on Tai Lung. At the same time, Shifu announces a grand tournament to choose the Dragon Warrior, a legendary hero who is destined to protect the valley and earn the right to read the Dragon's Scroll. The candidates are Shifu's 5 most talented students, known as the Furious 5: Tigress, Monkey, Crane, Viper and Mantis. Everyone in the valley is excited about the event. Among those excited is Po, a large panda who absolutely loves Kung Fu. He dreams of becoming a Kung Fu master someday, even though he spends his days helping his father, Mr. Ping, run their noodle restaurant. Mr. Ping hopes Po will take over the family business and learn the secret ingredient behind his famous secret ingredient soup. However, Po is much more interested in Kung Fu than noodles. When Po hears about the Dragon Warrior tournament, he rushes to see it. Unfortunately, he arrives late and finds himself locked outside the arena. After several funny and desperate attempts to get inside, he finally succeeds. However, his entrance goes completely wrong and he accidentally crashes into the middle of the ceremony. To everyone's surprise, Master Oogway points to Po and declares him the Dragon Warrior. Nobody can believe what has happened. Shifu thinks Oogway made a mistake, and the Furious 5 are disappointed that an untrained panda has been chosen instead of one of them. During training, Po struggles with even the simplest tasks and becomes the target of criticism and jokes. Feeling embarrassed and discouraged, he begins thinking about giving up and returning home. Master Oogway, however, believes there is something special about Po. He encourages him to keep trying and never lose faith in himself. Over time, Po's determination, positive attitude, and sense of humour slowly earn the respect of the Furious 5, and he begins to form friendships with them. One day, Tigress tells Po the story of Tai Lung. Years earlier, Tai Lung was Shifu's most talented student. Shifu raised him almost like a son and believed he would become the Dragon Warrior. However, when Master Oogway looked into Tai Lung's heart, he saw darkness and refused to give him the Dragon Scroll. Furious and heartbroken, Tai Lung attacked the valley, forcing Oogway and Shifu to stop him and send him to prison. Meanwhile, Tai Lung successfully escapes from his heavily guarded prison and begins his journey back to the Valley of Peace. When Shifu learns about the escape, he becomes worried and informs Oogway. Before leaving the mortal world and ascending to the spirit realm, Oogway tells Shifu to believe in Po and trust that he is the true dragon warrior. Oogway also names Shifu as his successor. After Oogway's departure, Shifu informs Po and the Furious Five that Tai Lung is coming. He explains that only the dragon warrior can stop him. Hearing this, Po becomes terrified. He doubts himself and starts to leave, believing he is not capable of saving anyone. Shifu stops him, but even Shifu admits that he does not know how to turn Po into a true dragon warrior. At the same time, the Furious Five decide to face Tai Lung on their own before he reaches the valley. They bravely confront him, but despite their skills and teamwork, they are defeated. Tai Lung uses his powerful nerve strike technique to paralyze them and continues his journey. Back at the Jade Palace, Shifu finally discovers something unusual about Po. He notices that Po becomes incredibly fast, agile and determined whenever food is involved. Realizing this, Shifu creates a special training method based on Po's love of food. Through this unique training, Po quickly improves and begins unlocking his hidden potential. When the injured Furious Five return, Shifu believes Po is finally ready to receive the Dragon Scroll. Everyone gathers as Po opens it for the first time. However, instead of finding a secret formula or magical power, the scroll appears completely blank and only reflects the person looking at it. Believing the scroll is useless, everyone feels disappointed and hopeless. Thinking there is no way to defeat Tai Lung, Shifu tells Po and the Furious Five to help evacuate the Valley of Peace while he stays behind to face Tai Lung alone. Saddened by the situation, Po returns home and talks with his father. Wanting to encourage his son, Mr. Ping reveals an important truth. His famous secret ingredient soup never had a secret ingredient at all. The only thing that made it special was believing that it was special. Suddenly, Po understands the real meaning of the Dragon Scroll. The scroll was never meant to give someone magical powers. Its message is that true power comes from believing in yourself. With new confidence and determination, Po rushes back to help Shifu. Shifu fights Tai Lung in an intense battle but is eventually overpowered and badly defeated. Just when all hope seems lost, Po arrives carrying the Dragon Scroll and challenges Tai Lung. During the fight, Tai Lung manages to take the scroll, but he is just as confused by its empty appearance. Furious, he attacks Po with his nerve strike technique, but it has no effect because of Po's unique body. Using everything he learned from Shifu's training, Po fights back with confidence and skill. In an exciting final battle, he gains the upper hand and defeats Tai Lung using the legendary Wuxi finger hold, a technique he learned on his own. With Tai Lung finally defeated, the Valley of Peace is saved and Po is celebrated as a true hero. At last, everyone recognises that he really is the Dragon Warrior. A star-studded voice ensemble that defined a generation when DreamWorks Animation set out to bring Kung Fu Panda to life in 2008. The filmmakers understood that the soul of the film would live or die in its voice cast. An animated movie set in a fantasy version of ancient China, populated by anthropomorphic animals practicing martial arts, demanded voices that could carry both comedy and genuine emotional weight. What emerged was one of the most impressive ensembles ever assembled for an animated feature, a lineup of Academy Award winners, action legends and comedy titans who collectively turned a quirky concept into a global phenomenon. The film grossed $631.7 million on a budget of $130 million, making it the highest grossing animated film of 2008 worldwide, and the casting was integral to that success. Jack Black as Po-At, the very centre of Kung Fu Panda, is Po, the giant panda who dreams of kung fu glory while working in his father's noodle shop. The role required a voice that could be simultaneously bumbling and endearing, goofy yet surprisingly heroic. And DreamWorks found its answer in Jack Black. Black was announced as the film's main voice star as early as September 2005, when DreamWorks first publicly revealed the project. Prior to this role, Black had voiced characters in Ice Age 2002 and Shark Tale 2004, but Po was his first time anchoring an animated feature entirely on his own. He was drawn into the part by DreamWorks animation co-founder Jeffrey Katzenberg, who gave him one critical piece of direction: be yourself, rather than construct a character from scratch. Black was reportedly convinced after Katzenberg showed him a short animation test built around audio from one of Black's earlier films. Watching his natural energy translated onto the panda's face was enough to seal the deal. What Black brought to the recording booth was raw, uninhibited physicality. He did not simply sit in front of a microphone and read lines. According to those involved in production, Black performed kung fu moves, used extreme facial expressions, and threw his entire body into the sessions. This kinetic approach gave Po an authenticity that audiences immediately recognised and loved. His comic timing was widely praised, delivering laugh-out-loud moments without ever letting the character feel like a caricature. Critics singled out his performance as the heart of the film, with one reviewer noting that while the cast was stellar across the board, Kung Fu Panda was fundamentally Jack Black's show. Dustin Hoffman as Master Shifu if Jack Black was the comedic engine of the film. Dustin Hoffman provided its emotional gravitas. The two-time Academy Award winner took on the role of Master Shifu, the elderly red panda who serves as Kung Fu Master to the Furious Five and is eventually tasked, against his better judgment, with training the unqualified Po. Hoffman's casting was an inspired and somewhat unexpected choice. Shifu is a character of enormous complexity, stern and demanding on the surface, but carrying deep wounds from his past relationship with Tai Lung, his former adoptive son and student. Hoffman brought a layered precision to the role that few actors could have managed. His voice conveyed authority and discipline in one breath and quiet heartbreak in the next. Many viewers admitted they would never have guessed Hoffman was behind the voice, a testament to how completely he disappeared into the character. The dynamic between Shifu and Po, the reluctant mentor and the unlikely student, forms the emotional spine of the movie, and Hoffman's work made that relationship utterly believable. His ability to balance the sternness of Shifu's external demeanour with the vulnerability of a master who had once loved and lost a student gave the character dimensions rarely found in animated films. Ian McShane as Tai Lung. Every great animated film needs a great villain, and Kung Fu Panda found one in the imposing form of Ian McShane. The British actor, already celebrated for his menacing turn as Al Swearingen in the HBO series Deadwood, brought his trademark velvet-edged menace to Tai Lung, a snow leopard and former prodigy of Master Shifu, who was denied the Dragon Scroll and subsequently imprisoned for his violent rampage. McShane's voice work is remarkable in its restraint. Tai Lung is not a cartoonish screaming villain. He is cold, calculating, and utterly convinced of his own righteousness. A character who genuinely believes he was wronged, which makes him far more frightening than a simple evildoer. McShane's natural vocal quality, deep, precise, and faintly aristocratic, gave Tai Lung a sinister elegance that matched the character's fluid, devastating fighting style. The battle sequences involving Tai Lung are among the most thrillingly animated in DreamWorks history, and McShane's voice gave those scenes a weight and menace that elevated them beyond spectacle. His performance proved so definitive that when Tai Lung was brought back for Kung Fu Panda 4 in 2024, McShane was considered irreplaceable. The director of that film openly stated that had McShane declined to return, the entire story would have needed to change as no alternate plan existed. Angelina Jolie as Master Tigress, the fierce leader of the Furious Five and the character who most directly challenges Po's presence at the Jade Palace, was voiced by Angelina Jolie. At the time of production, Jolie was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, known for action roles in the Lara Croft franchise and acclaimed dramatic performances, such as her Oscar-winning role in Girl, Interrupted. She brought both dimensions to Tigress. Jolie's portrayal captures a character who is all discipline, pride, and controlled power. A warrior who has trained her entire life and resents the notion that an accident of fate has placed a clumsy noodle shop worker above her. But beneath that hard exterior, Jolie also conveyed the emotional complexity of a student who has devoted everything to earning her master's approval. Her voice is commanding without being aggressive, fierce without being one-dimensional. Tigress became one of the most beloved characters in the franchise, in large part because Jolie gave her the emotional depth to be more than just the skeptic who eventually accepts Po. It is also worth noting that Kung Fu Panda marked the second DreamWorks animation collaboration between Jolie and Jack Black, following their appearance together in Shark Tale in 2004. Jackie Chan as Master Monkey. The casting of Jackie Chan as Master Monkey was, in many respects, the most symbolically fitting choice in the entire film. Chan is arguably the world's most famous practitioner of action comedy martial arts filmmaking, and his presence in an animated kung fu comedy was both a tribute to the genre and a savvy piece of casting that thrilled audiences around the globe. Master Monkey is described as easygoing, playful, and warm, qualities that align naturally with Chan's own public persona. Chan also reprised his role in the film's Chinese language dub, giving his performance a cross-cultural resonance that few other cast members could have achieved. Though Monkey does not receive the same amount of screen time as some of the other Furious 5 members, Chan's recognisable energy is unmistakable, and his involvement lent the film significant credibility among fans of martial arts cinema worldwide. Lucy Liu as Master Viper. Lucy Liu brought elegance and grace to Master Viper, the gentle-natured yet lethally skilled green snake of the Furious 5. Liu, best known at the time for her roles in Charlie's Angels and the Kill Bill films, was a natural fit for a character who combines beauty and deadliness in equal measure. Viper is unique among the Furious 5 in that she is the most overtly compassionate, the member who first genuinely warms to Po and sees past his awkwardness. Liu's voice work captures both sides of the character, the softness of a friend and the steel of a warrior. Her vocal performance adds warmth to ensemble scenes that might otherwise have tilted too far toward humour or action, providing an emotional counterbalance within the group dynamic. Seth Rogen as Master Mantis. Seth Rogen, best known for his work in comedies such as Knocked Up and Superbad, voiced Master Mantis, the smallest member of the Furious 5 and perhaps the funniest. Rogen's signature laid-back, slightly raspy delivery was a perfect match for a tiny praying mantis who happens to be one of the Valley of Peace's most feared warriors. Mantis provides some of the film's best comedic moments, largely because of the incongruity between the character's diminutive size and his enormous self-confidence. Rogen's natural comedy instincts meant that even brief lines landed with impact. His work here, alongside Jack Black's Po, gave the film some of its most memorable light relief moments. David Cross as Master Crane. David Cross, the comedian and actor known for his work on Arrested Development and Mr. Show, voiced Master Crane, a tall, lanky bird who uses aerial combat and a wry, self-deprecating humour. Cross was well suited to a character whose comedy often derives from being perpetually put upon, the sensible straight man in a group of more flamboyant personality. Hastars Crane is often overlooked among the Furious 5, but Cross's distinctive comic timing ensured the character had real presence in ensemble scenes. Cross would go on to collaborate with Jack Black again the following year in Year 1, 2009, reinforcing a chemistry between the two that was already evident in their animated work. Randall Duck Kim as Master Oogway, one of the most philosophically rich characters in the film, Master Oogway, the ancient Galapagos tortoise and supreme kung fu master, was voiced by Korean-American actor Randall Duck Kim, known to mainstream audiences for his role as the Keymaker in The Matrix Reloaded. Kim brought a serene, otherworldly quality to Oogway that made the old tortoise feel genuinely wise, rather than merely saying wise-sounding things. Oogway's dialogue contains some of the most quoted lines in modern animated film history. Meditations on the present moment, on fate, on inner belief, and Kim's measured, gentle delivery gave those words real weight. He sounds ancient without sounding frail, spiritual without sounding remote. It is a subtle, beautifully calibrated performance. James Hong, as Mr. Ping James Hong, one of the most prolific character actors in Hollywood history with a career stretching back to the 1950s, voiced Mr. Ping. Poe's adoptive father, Goose, who runs the famous noodle restaurant and whose boundless optimism and familial warmth provide much of the film's emotional heart. Hong was perfect for the role. His voice carried humour, love, and just the right touch of obliviousness, making Mr. Ping both funny and genuinely moving supporting voices. Dan Fogler, Michael Clark Duncan, Wayne Knight, and Kyle Gass, the supporting cast, rounded out the film's world with considerable talent. Dan Fogler, fresh off his Tony Award-winning Broadway career and roles in films like Balls of Fury, voiced Zeng, the timid palace Goose and Shifu's messenger. The late Michael Clark Duncan, the Academy Award-nominated actor beloved for The Green Mile, brought his thunderous voice to Commander Vachir, the boastful rhinoceros warden of Chorgom Prison. Wayne Knight, famous as Newman in Seinfeld, voiced the gang boss. Perhaps most amusingly, Kyle Gass, Black's real-life bandmate in the comedy rock duo Tenacious D, appeared as KG Shaw, a pig who spots Poe before the Dragon Warrior tournament, alongside J.R. Reid as J.R. Shaw. The collective achievement of the cast, what makes the voice cast of Kung Fu Panda so remarkable, is not simply the individual star power involved, but the way in which every performance serves the story. DreamWorks had assembled luminaries from action cinema, prestige drama and comedy, and each brought their distinctive gifts to bear on characters that genuinely needed those gifts. The combination produced a film that worked on multiple levels, simultaneously funny enough for children, emotionally resonant enough for adults, and dramatically compelling for anyone in between. The casting was not stunt casting for marketing purposes. It was purposeful, precise, and ultimately essential to why Kung Fu Panda became one of the most beloved animated films of the 21st century. Production origins of the idea and early development of the story of how Kung Fu Panda came to be is itself a narrative worthy of a hero's journey. The film's foundational concept was conceived by Michael Lachance, a DreamWorks animation executive who imagined a story about a panda and kung fu, two iconic symbols of Chinese culture, as the bedrock of an animated feature. Before arriving at the version that would eventually captivate global audiences, the project underwent significant creative transformation, shifting from a relatively straightforward parody concept into a deeply earnest and ambitious animated wuxia film. Publicised work on the film began in October 2004, at a time when DreamWorks Animation was riding high on the successes of the Shrek franchise and exploring new animated universes. However, the earliest conception of the project was not the action-adventure epic it would eventually become. Initially, the idea was to make it a spoof, a light, mocking treatment of the martial arts genre that would play primarily for laughs by poking fun at kung fu movie conventions. This approach was common for Hollywood animated features of the era, which often leaned on parody and pop culture references as their dominant comedic register. What fundamentally changed the film's direction was the involvement of co-director John Stevenson, who was not particularly keen on the spoof concept and instead chose to steer the project in the direction of a character-based wuxia comedy. Stevenson was a genuine admirer of the martial arts film tradition, and saw in the premise an opportunity to do something both commercially appealing and artistically meaningful. To make a film that honoured the craft and beauty of Kung Fu cinema rather than mocking it. His passion for the genre shaped every subsequent creative decision made on the production. Stevenson articulated his vision with notable clarity. We love martial arts movies. I wasn't interested in making fun of them because I really think they can be great films. They can be as good as any genre movie when they're done properly. Let's try to make it a real martial arts movie, albeit one with a comic character, and let's take our action seriously. Let's not give anything up to the big summer movies. Let's really make sure that our Kung Fu is as cool as any Kung Fu ever done, so that we can take our place in that canon and make sure it's a beautiful movie. Because great martial arts movies are really beautiful looking movies, and then let's see if we can imbue it with real heart and emotion. This statement served as the guiding artistic philosophy of the entire production. In September 2005, DreamWorks formally announced the film alongside the casting of Jack Black as its main voice star, a choice that would prove enormously influential in shaping the character of Po. 2 months later, in November 2005, the studio announced that Dustin Hoffman, Jackie Chan, Lucy Liu and Ian McShane would join Black in the cast. This announcement confirmed that DreamWorks was assembling a genuinely star-studded ensemble, signalling the studio's confidence in the project and its intention to position Kung Fu Panda as a major summer event film. It is worth noting a fascinating footnote to the film's genesis. In spring 2004, composer Eric Whittaker wrote a setting of The Seal Lullaby, the opening poem of Rudyard Kipling's The White Seal, which DreamWorks had originally intended to adapt for an animated feature. A few weeks into that process, the studio decided to abandon the idea entirely and pivot to production on Kung Fu Panda instead. A change, of course, that would prove to be one of the most commercially and creatively rewarding decisions in the studio's history. Development and pre-production screenplay, research and creative vision the screenplay for Kung Fu Panda was written by Jonathan Eibel and Glenn Berger, a writing duo who had previously worked as writers and producers on various television series, including The George Carlin Show, Mad TV and King of the Hill. Their background in character-driven comedy and sharp, accessible dialogue made them well suited to the task of building a hero's journey narrative around a lovable, bumbling panda with an outsized dream. The original story was conceived by Ethan Reif and Cyrus Voris, whose foundational premise gave Eibel and Berger the building blocks with which to construct a full-feature narrative. The screenplay was reportedly inspired in part by Stephen Chow's 2004 martial arts action comedy film Kung Fu Hustle, a wildly inventive blend of slapstick action and genuine emotional resonance that demonstrated that the Kung Fu genre could be both funny and moving at the same time. Kung Fu Hustle showed the DreamWorks team that it was possible to honour the martial arts tradition while making a film accessible to a broad international audience, and its influence can be felt in Kung Fu Panda's tonal balancing act between humour and genuine dramatic stakes. Once the tonal direction was established, the creative team committed to extensive research into Chinese culture, painting, architecture and Kung Fu cinema to ensure the film would possess genuine authenticity. Production designer Raymond Zibak and art director Tang Heng spent years immersing themselves in the visual traditions of China. They studied Chinese painting techniques, sculptural styles, traditional architecture, and the full canon of Chinese martial arts films to build a visual vocabulary that would feel genuinely rooted in real cultural tradition rather than being a superficial pastiche. Zibak identified the most artful martial arts films, particularly Hero, 2002, House of Flying Daggers, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, as the primary cinematic influences on the film's visual approach. These films were known not only for their spectacular action choreography, but also for their extraordinary visual poetry, their use of landscape, colour and space as expressive tools. By grounding Kung Fu Panda in this elevated aesthetic tradition, the production team positioned the film as a serious heir to these classics rather than a parody of them. Stevenson's stated aim for the film, which took 4 years to make in total, was to create the best-looking film DreamWorks has ever made. This was not an idle boast, but a genuine organisational goal that shaped decisions across every department, from character design to environmental design, from lighting to action choreography. Character design and animation philosophy, the character design process, was central to the film's pre-production work. Character designer Nico Marlett was tasked with creating a visual world of anthropomorphic animals that would be simultaneously expressive, culturally resonant, and dynamically suited to kung fu action. Marlett's designs had to serve multiple creative masters at once. They needed to be visually funny, physically credible as kung fu practitioners, and evocative of the Chinese artistic traditions the film was drawing upon. Po, the giant panda at the heart of the story, underwent considerable evolution during development. Producer Melissa Cobb noted that Po was originally conceived as more of a jerk in early drafts. The character changed significantly after the creative team heard Jack Black's voice and understood what kind of warmth, enthusiasm, and self-deprecating humour the actor brought to the role. Black's natural exuberance and his ability to project genuine emotional vulnerability transformed Po from a potentially cynical comedy protagonist into one of animated film's most endearing heroes. The Furious Five, Tigress, Monkey, Crane, Viper and Mantis, were designed as homages to the 5 major animal styles of Chinese Kung Fu: Tiger style, Monkey style, Crane style, Snake style, and Praying Mantis style, respectively. Each character's fighting style, fighting stature, personality, and visual design was developed to reflect the characteristics of their respective animals and martial arts traditions, creating a cast of supporting characters that were both culturally grounded and individually distinct. The animation process, technical complexity, and artistic ambition. The production of Kung Fu Panda represented a significant technical and creative leap for DreamWorks animation. The computer animation used throughout the film was acknowledged to be more complex than anything the studio had previously attempted. When the head of the production handed the script to VFX supervisor Marcus Manningen, she reportedly laughed and wished him good luck, an acknowledgement of the extraordinary technical challenges that bringing the film's vision to life would involve. Manningen himself reflected on the scope of those challenges. When we started talking, the movie was still a high concept, but for everyone that looked at it, it screamed complexity. We launched off by saying, how can you make this movie tangible? How can you make this movie tangible? How can you find smart ways to bring this world to life in a way that makes it a great movie and not feel like the complexity becomes the driver of the story and the emotion being the driver? This framing, in which technical complexity had to serve rather than overwhelm the human and emotional dimensions of the story, guided the technical team's approach throughout production. To prepare for animating kung fu combat sequences with authentic quality and energy, the animators took a 6-hour kung fu class. This practical education was not merely a publicity stunt, but a genuine attempt to internalize the physical grammar of martial arts movement, to understand how weight, momentum, breath, and intention manifest in kung fu techniques, so that these elements could be translated convincingly into the movements of animated animal characters. The production of Kung Fu Panda was noted for its remarkably smooth and harmonious internal dynamics, which was itself a significant achievement given the film's technical complexity and ambitious scope. Dan Wagner, the head of character animation, described the experience in unusually positive terms. We've had some productions that were stressful. This one ran very smoothly, and DreamWorks is using this production as a template on how they would like future productions to run. We lucked out, and there really was a sense of harmony on the animation, even the production people. We all seemed like we were on the same page believing in the film. That doesn't happen very often. I tell animators, you will be working on dumpers for most of your career. Every once in a while you get a gem. Kung Fu Panda was a gem. This sense of shared belief and creative harmony within the production team is often reflected in the film itself, which has a tonal consistency and emotional coherence that is rare in animated features produced under the pressures of major studio filmmaking. The opening sequence and mixed animation styles one of the film's most distinctive and critically praised formal choices was the use of different animation styles to serve different narrative and tonal purposes. The hand-drawn animation sequence at the beginning of the film was designed to resemble Chinese shadow puppetry, an ancient and beautiful art form that immediately signalled the film's commitment to honouring Chinese cultural traditions. This opening, which depicted Poe's fantasy of himself as a heroic kung fu warrior, was directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson and produced by James Baxter, both of whom would go on to major careers in animation. Nelson would later direct Kung Fu Panda 2, making her one of the first women to solo direct a major Hollywood animated feature. Manohla Dargis of the New York Times praised the opening sequence as striking and visually different from most mainstream American animations, a reaction that captured the genuine freshness the sequence brought to a film genre that was prone to visual homogeneity. Other reviewers compared the opening to the distinctive, expressive style of Genndy Tartakovsky's Samurai Jack on Cartoon Network, a significant compliment, as Samurai Jack was widely celebrated for its sophisticated visual storytelling and its willingness to draw on global animation traditions. The body of the film uses modern computer animation, which employs bright, offbeat colours that evoke the natural landscape of China without being slavishly photorealistic. The world of the Valley of Peace is rendered with a painterly quality that suggests Chinese landscape tradition while remaining visually accessible and vibrant for a broad family audience. The end credit sequence also returns to hand-drawn animation with characters and still paintings in the background, bookending the film with a visual aesthetic that honours its cultural inspirations. Voice recording and cast dynamics, the process of recording voice performances for Kung Fu Panda, was notably different from the collaborative ensemble approach used in some animated features. Jack Black, who voiced Poe, worked mostly in isolation, according to his own account, a common practice in animated film production where scheduling and technical constraints often prevent cast members from recording together. However, Black and Dustin Hoffman, who voiced Master Shifu, did spend a day recording together, and producer Melissa Cobb specifically noted that this joint session was valuable in establishing the dynamic between their characters, particularly in the scene where Poe and Shifu face off and begin to develop their complex mentor-student relationship. Dustin Hoffman's casting as Master Shifu was an inspired choice that brought a layered dramatic intelligence to what might otherwise have been a straightforward authority figure. Hoffman approached the role with genuine craft, bringing to Shifu a quality of suppressed regret and wounded pride that gave the character genuine tragic depth, particularly in the backstory of his relationship with Tai Lung, whom he had raised as a son only to be betrayed by. Lucy Liu, who voiced Master Viper, reflected on the unique experience of working on an animated production. The film was quite different because it was such a long process. She noted that when she was first presented with the project, the team already had artwork of her character, as well as a short computerized video version of what she would look like when she moved. A demonstration of how far along the visual development of the film was before the voice cast was fully engaged with their characters. Post-production editing and final assembly post-production on Kung Fu Panda involved the complex assembly of thousands of individually rendered animation elements into the coherent, emotionally engaging whole that audiences would ultimately see. The film was edited by Claire Knight, who faced the task of managing rhythm and pacing across a film that needed to balance slapstick comedy, spectacular action sequences, emotional drama, and the quieter character-building moments that gave the story its depth and resonance. The challenge of post-production on an animated film of this complexity extended beyond conventional editing to encompass the continuous refinement of visual effects, lighting, and rendering. The world of the Valley of Peace, with its detailed environmental design, complex lighting conditions, and large crowd sequences, required an enormous amount of computational work to render to the visual standard the directors had set for themselves. The action sequences in particular required extensive work in post-production to achieve the fluid, dynamic quality that would distinguish them from conventional animated fight scenes. The directors had committed to making kung fu action that was genuinely on par with the best live action martial arts cinema had to offer, and achieving this in animation required continuous iteration, adjusting timing, impact, camera angles, and the choreography of individual movements to create sequences that conveyed real physical weight and consequence. The film's sound design was similarly ambitious. The Golden Reel Award nomination for Best Sound Editing in an Animated Feature Film acknowledged the work of a large team of sound editors, including Ethan van der Ryn, Eric Ardal, Mike Hopkins, Jonathan Klein, Adam Milo Smalley, and others, who created a rich sonic world for the Valley of Peace and its inhabitants. The sound of kung fu combat in the film had to be simultaneously exaggerated for comic and dramatic effect, while retaining a sense of physical reality that would make the action sequences feel genuinely exciting. Music Hans Zimmer, John Powell, and the musical score for Kung Fu Panda was composed by Hans Zimmer, one of Hollywood's most acclaimed and prolific film composers, who had a long-standing relationship with DreamWorks Animation going back to his Oscar-winning work on The Lion King. As with most DreamWorks animation films of the period, Zimmer was brought on as the primary composer, but the final score would ultimately be the product of a significant creative collaboration. Zimmer's preparation for the score was characteristically immersive and research-driven. He visited China specifically to absorb the culture firsthand, seeking to understand the musical traditions, instruments, and aesthetic sensibilities of Chinese classical music and folk music. As part of his preparation, he got to know the China National Symphony Orchestra and incorporated the orchestra into his scoring process. A decision that gave the film's score an authentic Chinese musical texture that complemented and deepened the visual and narrative commitment to Chinese culture. Although Zimmer was originally announced as the sole main composer of the film, it was revealed during a test screening by DreamWorks Animation CEO Jeffrey Katzenberg that composer John Powell would also be contributing significantly to the score. This announcement formalised a creative partnership that had not originally been planned and which would ultimately result in a score of unusual richness and depth. Powell and Zimmer had previously collaborated on two earlier projects, DreamWorks Animation's The Road to El Dorado and the action thriller Chill Factor, both in 1999 and 2000. Their reunion on Kung Fu Panda marked their first collaboration in 8 years. The combination of Zimmer's orchestral grandeur and Powell's propulsive, melodically inventive style proved highly successful. The score won the Annie Award for Best Music in an animated feature production, a recognition of the exceptional quality of the musical work. The soundtrack album was released by Interscope Records on June 3, 2008, 3 days before the film's theatrical release in the United States. Producer Timbaland also contributed to the soundtrack, bringing a contemporary musical sensibility to certain elements of the film's sonic palette. Perhaps the most memorable piece of music associated with the film, however, was the end credits song, a partially rewritten version of the classic disco hit Kung Fu Fighting, originally recorded by Carl Douglas in 1974 and now performed by CeeLo Green and Jack Black. The song became something of an unofficial anthem for the film, and its inclusion was a playful acknowledgement of the pop cultural history of Kung Fu's presence in Western imagination. In some international versions, the end credits version of the song was performed by South Korean singer Rain. Release the world premiere of Kung Fu Panda took place at the 61st Cannes Film Festival on May 15, 2008. An unusually prestigious venue for an animated family film and a sign of the confidence DreamWorks Animation and Paramount Pictures had in the picture's quality. The premiere was a significant success, with the film receiving massive and sustained applause at the end of its screening from the Cannes audience. This reception validated the creative team's belief that they had made something genuinely exceptional and set the tone for the enthusiastic public response that would follow in subsequent months. Following the Cannes premiere, the film held national premieres in IMAX format in the United States on June 3, 2008 at AMC and Regal Cinemas in Hollywood, California. The IMAX presentation was a premium exhibition strategy that reflected the film's ambitious visual scale. Its landscapes, action sequences, and detailed environmental design were well suited to the large format presentation, and IMAX screenings provided audiences with an even more immersive viewing experience than standard theatrical projection. The film was then theatrically released across the United States on June 6, 2008 by Paramount Pictures, which was distributing DreamWorks Animation's films at that time. The UK national premiere followed on June 26, 2008 at Leicester Square in London, the traditional heart of the British film premiere circuit. And they date back from the 1980s. The UK release positioned the film for strong international performance across the English-speaking world. In anticipation of the film's Japanese release, DreamWorks arranged for a manga adaptation of the film's story to be published in Japan in the September 2008 issue of Kero Kero Ace magazine. The manga was written by Hanten Okuma and illustrated by Takafumi Adachi, and its publication represented a thoughtful effort to engage Japanese audiences through a familiar and beloved local medium. This cross-cultural marketing strategy reflected the studio's awareness that Kung Fu Panda had particular potential to resonate in Asian markets, given its deep engagement with Chinese cultural themes. Distribution rights. The film's distribution history involved several changes of rights holders over the years following its initial release. Paramount Pictures originally distributed the film in the United States. In July 2014, the distribution rights were purchased by DreamWorks Animation from Paramount Pictures and subsequently transferred to 20th Century Fox. The rights then reverted to Universal Pictures in 2018, following NBC Universal's acquisition of DreamWorks Animation in 2016. These transitions reflected the complex commercial dynamics of the studio system and the ongoing restructuring of the entertainment industry during the 2010s. Home media DVD, Blu-ray, and Beyond Kung Fu Panda was released on DVD and Blu-ray on November 9, 2008, approximately 5 months after its theatrical debut, a relatively standard home media release window for a major studio film of that era. The DVD double-disc release included the short animated film Secrets of the Furious 5, a standalone companion piece that expanded on the backstories of Tigress, Monkey, Crane, Viper and Mantis, giving audiences who had come to love these characters in the feature film additional narrative material to enjoy. The Blu-ray release of Kung Fu Panda was particularly significant in the context of the ongoing format war between Blu-ray and HD DVD, which was effectively concluded in early 2008 when Toshiba announced it would cease development of HD DVD. The release of Kung Fu Panda on Blu-ray came during the period when Blu-ray was establishing itself as the dominant high-definition home video format, and the film's stunning visuals, its rich colour palette, detailed environments and fluid animation made it an ideal showcase disc for the format. On December 6, 2011, a 3D Blu-ray version of the film was released as a Best Buy exclusive. This release took advantage of the then growing consumer appetite for 3D home video content, following the explosion of 3D theatrical exhibition that had been supercharged by the success of Avatar in 2009. The 3D Blu-ray version allowed audiences to experience the film's visual spectacle in an enhanced format from the comfort of their own homes. In March 2024, the film was released on 4K UHD format, bringing the film to the newest generation of home video technology. The 4K UHD release was packaged with the short film Kung Fu Panda, Secrets of the Scroll, providing additional content for fans of the franchise. The film was also made available on the streaming platform Peacock on June 6, 2024, exactly 16 years after its original theatrical release date, making it accessible to subscribers of NBC Universal's streaming service. Home video sales performance. The commercial performance of Kung Fu Panda in the home video market was exceptional and reflected the film's broad popularity. With 7,486,642 DVD units sold in 2008 alone, Kung Fu Panda was the fourth highest-selling film and the highest-selling animated film of the year, a remarkable achievement that placed it above Pixar's critically acclaimed WALL-E, which sold 7,413,548 units. The fact that Kung Fu Panda outsold WALL-E on DVD was a noteworthy commercial validation, given that WALL-E won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, a prize for which Kung Fu Panda had also been nominated. As of February 2010, 17.4 million home entertainment units of Kung Fu Panda had been sold worldwide. This figure encompassed DVD, Blu-ray and other home video formats, and reflected the film's sustained commercial appeal in the 2 years following its theatrical release. The home video performance contributed significantly to the film's overall profitability and helped to establish it as one of the most commercially successful animated films of its era. Reception box office performance Kung Fu Panda was released in the United States on June 6, 2008, entering a competitive summer market that included major franchise releases and high-profile comedies. Its box office performance immediately established it as one of the most successful animated films of the decade. The film topped the box office in its opening weekend, grossing $60.2 million from 4,114 theatres for a per-theatre average of $14,642. This opening figure significantly exceeded analyst expectations, which had been more conservative given that the film was competing in a crowded summer marketplace. The $60. 2 million opening was also the highest grossing opening weekend for a non-sequel DreamWorks animation film at the time, a record that underscored the exceptional level of public anticipation and interest that had been built up around the picture. In its second weekend, the film retreated 44% to second place behind The Incredible Hulk, grossing $33.6 million from an expanded run of 4,136 theatres. The 44% drop was considered healthy for a summer animated film, indicating that audience enthusiasm was sustaining solid word-of-mouth attendance beyond the opening weekend rush. The film ran for 125 days in American cinemas before closing on October 9, 2008. Over its full domestic run, Kung Fu Panda grossed $215 million in the United States and Canada, a figure that established it as a major commercial success by any standard. Its international performance was even more striking. The film earned $416 million from territories outside North America, bringing its worldwide total to $632 million against a production budget of $130 million. This worldwide gross made Kung Fu Panda the third highest grossing film of 2008 and the highest grossing animated film of the year. Remarkable achievements that placed it ahead of every other animated feature released in that calendar year, including films from Pixar and Disney. Domestically, it was the highest grossing non-Shrek film from DreamWorks Animation in the United States and Canada until it was surpassed by How to Train Your Dragon in 2010, and they date back from the 1980s, which further demonstrated depth of audience affection that DreamWorks Animation was capable of generating when its films achieved the right combination of technical quality, emotional resonance, and cultural accessibility. Chinese box office and cultural impact. One of the most fascinating dimensions of Kung Fu Panda's Kung Fu Panda's commercial performance was its reception in China, the very nation whose culture had inspired and informed so much of the film's visual and narrative design. The film was received with genuine enthusiasm by Chinese audiences who responded warmly to the respectful and affectionate treatment of their cultural heritage. By July 2008, the film had made nearly 110 million yuan at the Chinese box office, becoming the first animated film to earn more than 100 million yuan in China, a historic milestone for both Chinese cinema and animated film broadly. This extraordinary commercial performance in China was matched by an enthusiastic critical reception from Chinese filmmakers and cultural commentators. Chinese director Lu Chuan offered a particularly striking assessment. From a production standpoint, the movie is nearly perfect. Its American creators showed a very sincere attitude about Chinese culture. This response from a respected Chinese filmmaker was a significant validation of the creative team's research-intensive approach to representing Chinese culture and their commitment to treating the source material with genuine respect and care. However, the film's commercial and critical success in China also generated a complex cultural conversation about the state of Chinese domestic animation. The film's achievement raised uncomfortable questions for Chinese audiences and commentators about why no comparable animated film had been produced within China itself. Various commentators attributed this gap to a range of factors, including lower film budgets in China, excessive government oversight of creative content, a perceived lack of national creative imagination, and an overly reverent attitude towards China's history and cultural icons that prevented artists from engaging with these traditions in fresh, dynamic ways. The debate triggered by Kung Fu Panda in China was in itself a measure of how deeply and meaningfully the film had engaged with its subject matter. Critical response overall, critical reception Kung Fu Panda received broadly positive reviews from critics across the spectrum of mainstream film journalism, specialist animation criticism, and international commentary. The critical response was notable both for its warmth and for the consistent themes that critics identified in explaining what made the film work as well as it did. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 87% based on 191 reviews, with an average rating of 7.1 out of 10. The website's critical consensus articulates the critical mainstream view of the film with admirable precision. Kung Fu Panda has a familiar message, but the pleasing mix of humour, swift martial arts action, and colourful animation makes for winning summer entertainment. This summary captures the film's dual identity as a technically accomplished crowd pleaser and as a vehicle for a genuinely heartfelt underdog story. At Metacritic, the film earned an average score of 74 out of 100 based on 36 reviews, indicating generally favourable reviews. While this score placed it below the highest rated critical achievements of its year, it nonetheless reflected a strong and sustained positive response from the critical community. Audiences polled by CinemaScore, a market research firm that surveys opening weekend audiences, gave the film an average grade of A- on a scale of A+ to F, indicating that general audiences were highly satisfied with what they had seen. A finding consistent with the film's strong word-of-mouth legs at the box office. Positive critical assessments among the most enthusiastic critical responses to Kung Fu Panda was that of Richard Corliss of Time magazine, who stated that the picture provides a master course in cunning visual art and ultra-satisfying entertainment. This review framed the film not merely as competent commercial entertainment, but as a work of genuine craft and artistry, a characterization that resonated with the creative team's stated ambitions for the project. The New York Times offered a nuanced and positive review that acknowledged the film's commercial conception while recognizing its genuine ambitions. At once fuzzy-wuzzy and industrial strength, the tacky-sounding Kung Fu Panda is high concept with a heart. The review called the film consistently diverting and visually arresting, singling out the opening hand-drawn sequence as particularly striking and visually innovative. Chris Barsanti of filmcritic.com offered perhaps the most enthusiastic assessment of the film's visual accomplishment, writing that it enters instant classic status as some of the most gorgeous animation Hollywood has produced since the golden age of Disney. This comparison to Disney's artistic golden age, the era of Snow White, Bambi, Fantasia and Sleeping Beauty, was a remarkable claim that spoke to the genuine elevation of DreamWorks Animation's visual standard in this film. Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune offered a broader cultural assessment, calling the film one of the few comedies of 2008 in any style or genre that knows what it's doing. A pointed compliment that positioned Kung Fu Panda as a work of genuine comic intelligence at a time when many Hollywood comedies were struggling with tone and substance. Critical reservations, not all critical responses, were uniformly enthusiastic. Some reviewers identified genuine weaknesses in the film alongside its considerable strengths. Tom Charity of CNN offered a more measured assessment, criticising the action for tending to blur into a whirlwind of slapstick chaos and expressing reservations about the character of Po, whom he considered too similar to other characters Jack Black had played previously. This criticism touched on a real concern about the relationship between a star voice actor's established persona and the demands of a fictional animated character, a tension that animated films regularly navigate with varying degrees of success. Peter Howell of the Toronto Star awarded the film 2.5 stars, a below-average rating that reflected his view that the film suffered from a lack of story while managing to frequently amuse, if not entirely to delight. This minority critical view acknowledged the film's comedic effectiveness while questioning the depth and originality of its narrative architecture. These critical reservations, though genuine, were clearly minority positions within the broader critical conversation. The overwhelming consensus was that Kung Fu Panda succeeded on its own terms as an animated action comedy, and that its visual ambition and emotional sincerity elevated it above the typical summer animated blockbuster. Awards and Recognition Academy. Awards and Golden Globes, Kung Fu Panda received nominations at both of Hollywood's most prestigious awards ceremonies. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature at the 81st Academy Awards, where it competed alongside Pixar's WALL-E and Disney's Bolt. While WALL-E ultimately won the Oscar, a result that was widely anticipated given its critical reception and the prestige of the Pixar brand, Kung Fu Panda's nomination was a significant recognition of its artistic achievement. Jack Black memorably joked about the film's underdog status at the Academy Awards ceremony, quipping, "Each year I do one DreamWorks project, then I take all the money to the Oscars and bet it on Pixar." This self-deprecating humour acknowledged the competitive reality, while also poking gentle fun at the perceived hierarchy between DreamWorks Animation and Pixar in the critical and awards community. Kung Fu Panda was also nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Animated Feature Film, where it competed in a category increasingly recognised as one of the most creatively interesting in the awards landscape. The Golden Globe nomination confirmed the film's status as one of the most artistically significant animated features of its year. Annie Awards. Dominant victory of Kung Fu Panda's performance at the Academy Awards and Golden Globes was that of a strong but ultimately unsuccessful contender. Its performance at the Annie Awards, the animation industry's own Guild Awards, was one of dominance and controversy. The film won 10 Annie Awards out of 16 nominations, an extraordinary haul that included Best Animated Feature, Best Directing, Best Character Design, Best Character Animation, Best Music, Best Production Design, Best Storyboarding, Best Writing, Best Animated Effects and Best Voice Acting for Dustin Hoffman. James Hong was also nominated for Best Voice Acting for his performance as Mr. Ping, and Ian McShane received a nomination for his portrayal of Tai Lung. This sweep of the Annie Awards sparked significant controversy within the animation industry. Some within the community accused DreamWorks animation head Jeffrey Katzenberg of rigging the vote by purchasing Asifa Hollywood memberships, which carried voting rights in the Annie Awards for everyone at DreamWorks Animation. The accusation raised serious questions about the integrity of the voting process and led to ongoing discussions about how the Annie Awards could better protect the fairness of their voting procedures. Regardless of the controversy surrounding the vote, the scope of the Annie Award wins reflected a genuine industry recognition that Kung Fu Panda had achieved something exceptional across multiple craft disciplines. Other awards and recognition beyond the major film awards, Kung Fu Panda received recognition from a wide range of other organisations and ceremonies. Jack Black won the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award for Favourite Voice from an animated movie, reflecting the film's enormous popularity with the young audiences who were its primary target demographic. The film received nominations from the Critics' Choice Awards, the Chicago Film Critics Association, the Producers Guild of America, the Teen Choice Awards, the Golden Trailer Awards, and the Visual Effects Society, among others. The film also won the Huabiao Award for Outstanding Translated Film, a Chinese government film award that recognised the exceptional quality of the film's localisation for Chinese audiences. This award was particularly meaningful given the film's deep engagement with Chinese culture and the extraordinary warmth of its reception in China. The ASCAP Award for Top Box Office Films was won by Hans Zimmer and John Powell for their score, an additional recognition of the musical achievement that complemented the score's Annie Award win. Legal controversies, the Terence Dunn lawsuit, the commercial success of Kung Fu Panda attracted legal challenges that reflected the film's perceived cultural and financial value. In 2011, DreamWorks Animation was sued by a writer named Terence Dunn, who alleged that the studio had stolen the idea for Kung Fu Panda from him. Dunn claimed that DreamWorks Animation had appropriated his pitch for a spiritual kung fu fighting panda bear that he had submitted to a DreamWorks executive in 2001. DreamWorks Animation categorically denied any wrongdoing, and after a 2-week trial, a jury found in favour of the studio. The verdict vindicated the studio's account of the film's origins and brought closure to a legal dispute that had cast a shadow over the film's legacy. The Jamie Gordon Caser second lawsuit brought in 2011 by an illustrator named James Gordon, proved to have considerably more dramatic implications, though ultimately for Gordon rather than for DreamWorks. And they, back from the 1980s, Gordon claimed to have created characters under the name Kung Fu Panda Power and to have registered them with the US Copyright Office in 2000. He alleged that he had pitched this concept to Disney while Jeffrey Katzenberg, who left Disney in 1994 to form DreamWorks Animation, was still working there, implying that Katzenberg had carried the idea with him when he left. Gordon withdrew his claim just before the trial was due to take place, an unusual move that attracted scrutiny. Subsequent investigation revealed why. On December 2015, federal prosecutors charged Gordon with 4 counts of wire fraud and 3 counts of perjury, alleging that he had fabricated and backdated drawings to support the claims in his lawsuit, and that he had traced some of his drawings from a colouring book featuring characters from Disney's The Lion King franchise. On November 18, 2016, Gordon was convicted on the charges of wire fraud and perjury, facing a potential sentence of up to 25 years in prison. In May 2017, he was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $3 million in restitution. The case became one of the most significant examples of copyright fraud in the history of Hollywood litigation, and its resolution firmly established that Kung Fu Panda was the original creative work of the DreamWorks animation team. Legacy and franchise impact spawning a franchise the commercial and critical success of Kung Fu Panda was so substantial that DreamWorks Animation began development on a sequel almost immediately after the film's release. Kung Fu Panda 2 was released in 2011 and was directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson, the same artist who had directed the acclaimed opening sequence of the original film. Kung Fu Panda 2 not only surpassed the box office performance of the first film, but received a similarly positive critical and audience response, confirming that the franchise had genuine legs and that audiences were eager to follow Po's continuing adventures. Kung Fu Panda 3, released in 2016, became one of the highest-grossing films of that year, further cementing the franchise as one of DreamWorks Animation's most commercially reliable and creatively ambitious properties. Kung Fu Panda 4 was released on March 8, 2024. Continuing the series into its 3rd decade, the franchise also extended into television animation. Kung Fu Panda: Legends of Awesomeness aired on Nickelodeon from 2011 to 2016, running for 3 seasons and 80 episodes. While most cast members from the original film did not reprise their roles for the series, with the exception of Lucy Liu as Master Viper and James Hong as Mr. Ping, the show continued Po's story in a format accessible to younger audiences. A second television series, Kung Fu Panda: The Paws of Destiny, was produced by DreamWorks Animation for Amazon Prime, premiering in November 2018. A third series, Kung Fu Panda: The Dragon Knight, premiered on Netflix in July 2022, with Jack Black returning to the role of Po and helping to reconnect the television output with the tone and energy of the original films. A television holiday special, Kung Fu Panda Holiday, aired on NBC in November 2010. The video game adaptation of Kung Fu Panda was published on June 3, 2008 by Activision, releasing simultaneously with the film's theatrical run. The game was made available across a wide range of platforms, including PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, PlayStation 2, Nintendo DS and PC. The game followed the same basic plot as the film, but expanded the story with additional content, depicting Tai Lung as the leader of various gangs surrounding the Valley of Peace, which Po must defeat. The game received mostly positive reviews, earning a Metacritic rating of 76% and a score of 7.5 out of 10 from IGN. Respectable scores for a film tie-in game, a genre that frequently suffers from rushed production and low creative ambition. In 2009, the game won the International Animated Film Society's Annie Award for Best Animated Video Game, recognizing its creative excellence, cultural significance. The lasting legacy of Kung Fu Panda extends beyond its commercial performance and franchise value. The film represented a watershed moment in the relationship between Hollywood animation and global cultural traditions. By committing to a genuine, research-based engagement with Chinese culture and martial arts cinema, rather than a superficial, parodic treatment, the creative team demonstrated that American animated film could draw on global cultural sources with authenticity, care, and artistic seriousness. The film's influence on the Chinese animation industry, though less tangible than its commercial impact, was nonetheless real. The debate triggered by its success in China about why no domestic Chinese studio had produced an animated film of comparable quality and ambition using China's own cultural materials helped to energize the Chinese animation industry's ambitions in the years that followed. The conversations prompted by Kung Fu Panda contributed, at least in part, to the significant growth and creative development of Chinese animation over the subsequent decade and a half. For DreamWorks Animation itself, Kung Fu Panda represented the studio's most complete artistic and commercial achievement to date. A film that proved the studio could compete with Pixar not merely on box office terms, but on the grounds of visual artistry, emotional depth, and cultural ambition. While the critical conversation during the awards season of 2008-2009 tended to position WALL-E and Kung Fu Panda in a hierarchy that favoured the Pixar film, the subsequent decades have seen Kung Fu Panda grow in reputation and affection, recognised increasingly as one of the genuinely great American animated films of the early 21st century. The film's central philosophical message that there is no secret ingredient and that what makes something special is the belief you invest in it proved to be not only a moving narrative resolution, but a statement of artistic faith that resonated with audiences worldwide. Poe's journey from self-doubting noodle shop assistant to the Dragon Warrior was, in the end, the studio's own journey. From a production initially conceived as a lightweight parody to a work of genuine beauty, depth, and enduring cultural significance. Slacker panda Poe Black gets more than he bargained for when he is selected as the Dragon Warrior, a fabled kung fu master, and pitted against a vengeful snow leopard, Ian McShane. With the exception of the first Shrek and Aardman's efforts under its aegis, DreamWorks Animation has tended to pale considerably when compared to the Pixar monolith. Shark Tale, B-Movie and Madagascar were mediocre efforts stranded in a morass of quickly dating pop culture references, uninspired gags, and a general absence of the spirit and visual acuity that sets John Lasseter's Mob apart. And apart from an excellent manga-style dream sequence that opens the picture, it seems after the first 25 minutes or so of Kung Fu Panda that the run is going to continue. There's nothing particularly compelling here, as Jack Black's Poe gets accidentally selected to become the fabled Dragon Warrior and tries desperately to prove himself to wise old Master Shifu, Dustin Hoffman, and his new skeptical dojo mates. In fact, it's pretty rote stuff, as Poe topples over, bumps into things, and sends stuff flying like a fat, furry version of the Chuckle Brothers. But then something rather wonderful happens, ratcheting the film up to the dizzying heights where Pixar and a few select others reside. That something is an escape attempt by the movie's villain, Tai Lung, voiced with relish by Ian McShane, a psychotic snow leopard so dangerous that he's been imprisoned in a mountain hellhole constructed especially for him. In an exhilarating sequence, Tai Lung manages to negotiate the 3 fiendish levels of the jail in a flurry of punches, kicks and gravity-defying leaps that culminate in a magnificent series of vertigo-inducing shots. In fact, ignore the fact that you're seeing combinations of panda, snake, tiger, snow leopard, crane and monkey duking it out, and chances are that the kung fu action sequence of your dreams is here. From a devilishly clever sequence where the Furious Five take on Tai Lung on an unravelling rope bridge, to a hugely enjoyable training sequence between Shifu and Po, and the final showdown between Po and Tai Lung, featuring the funniest use of slow-mo we've seen in ages. Directors Mark Osborne and John Stevenson take advantage of the limitless possibilities of CGI to bring us action on a scale and of a type rarely seen before. But it's not all about surprisingly violent fisticuffs or roundhouse kicks. There's a level of visual beauty here that's a notch above anything DreamWorks has attempted before. A sequence where the ancient master, Oogway Randall Duck Kim, blends with a cloud of cherry blossom is achingly gorgeous. And while the movie doesn't deliver frequent belly laughs, it does get funnier as it goes along, with the relationship between Po and Shifu particularly rich in humour. Of course, it's all leading to a standard be yourself message. But while the kidlings are digesting that tidbit of profundity, you can wallow in action that well and truly socks it to your chops. Hard. You'll never look at Ling Ling in the same way again. Rudimentary plot and merely decent gags aside, this is the finest DreamWorks animation effort since the first Shrek, chiefly because of its astonishing visuals and kinetic kung fu sequences. Martial arts movies have always had a certain cartoonish element. So DreamWorks' martial arts cartoon Kung Fu Panda makes perfect sense. Taking full advantage of CinemaScope's wide screen to splash quicker-than-the-eye action across striking Chinese landscapes, animators led by directors John Stevenson and Mark Osborne deliver a movie that is as funny as it is frantic. Though aimed primarily at youngsters, KF Panda embraces humour that plays well across age groups and nationalities. Certainly, the sustained applause at its Palais debut here in Cannes bodes well for international box office success. The stroke of genius is, of course, the film's hero, the big, lovable bear that is the Chinese panda. Sweet-looking, perhaps a bit clumsy, seemingly unflappable, what could be an odder hero for a kung fu movie? Transforming a panda named Po, voiced by big, lovable Jack Black, into a kung fu fighter to save a threatened village in ancient times is essentially the entire movie. He does not start with a lot of promise, only a boundless enthusiasm for the discipline and a seeming inability to perform its simplest tasks. His dad, a goose named Mr. Ping, James Hong, that discrepancy is never clarified, runs a noodle shop and expects his son to follow in his web steps. But Po longs to train under Master Shifu, Dustin Hoffman, and alongside his heroes, the Furious Five, Tigress, Angelina Jolie, Viper, Lucy Liu, Mantis, Seth Rogen, Crane, David Cross, and Monkey. Is that Jackie Chan? He miraculously fulfills this impossible dream when the inventor of Kung Fu, Oogway the Turtle, Randall Duck Kim, anoints him the long-prophesied Dragon Warrior. Comic calamities pile on top of one another until Shifu recognises Po's true driving force, his insatiable appetite. A bun or a cookie snatched from his grasp has Po performing feats of remarkable agility and no little ferocity. He is soon ready to face the villainous Tai Lung, Ian McShane, a snow leopard who descends on the fearful village to exact revenge, his own rejection as the Dragon Warrior. Like most chop-socky movies, KF Panda strays not at all from its twin goals of action and comedy. Whatever points the script by Jonathan Eibel and Glenn Berger want to make to children about pursuing goals, it does so quickly and gets back to the fights. A battle along a rope bridge between the Furious Five and Tai Lung and Po's showdown with his adversary dominate the final third of the film after the mostly comic run-up to those battles. The animation is clean and vivid. Backgrounds and sets are appreciative tributes to Chinese landscape art and architecture. The fighting style of each animal, whether a snake, a tiger or a monkey, is subtly rendered. And the filmmakers have clearly studied the best Asian martial arts films to spark inspiration for those gravity-defying stunts. Durs, Mark Osborne, John Stevenson, US 2008. 95 Mins the world has already fallen in love with a grumpy green ogre, Shrek, and a lugubrious mammoth, Ice Age, so it should have no trouble clasping a podgy, self-deprecating panda to its collective bosom. Kung Fu Panda ticks all the boxes for must-see family entertainment, and the cute factor is only enhanced by the vocal expertise of Jack Black and the fact that this particular rotund panda has delusions of martial arts grandeur. The film's status as the summer's animation frontrunner is only likely to be challenged by WLL. But until then, this is the kind of surefire Hollywood package that will generate global returns on the level of Horton Hears a Who and possibly beyond. DreamWorks have gone all Oriental for their latest animated venture, embracing every imaginable cliché from dragons and firecrackers to peach tree blossom and pagodas. Even the familiar DreamWorks logo has been given a makeover. The storyline of finding the hero inside yourself is no less obvious, but is given a sprightly freshness by the breathless pace, attention to detail and sheer good fun on offer. It might not be an instant classic, but it is extremely entertaining and a definite crowd pleaser. Jack Black is perfectly cast as Po, a clumsy, overweight panda who works in the family's noodle restaurant and harbours a fan's enthusiasm for martial arts and its greatest practitioners, the legendary Furious 5 Tigress, Jolie, Crane, Cross, Mantis, Seth Rogen, Viper, Liu and Monkey Chan. When the time comes to select the Dragon Warrior, those 5 are overlooked in favour of Po, much to the astonishment of their Obi-Wan Kenobi-style mentor, Master Shifu, Hoffman. When the dreaded Tai Lung, McShane, escapes from prison after 20 years of incarceration, Po has to fulfill his destiny and save the day even with his bad back, lack of puff and low self-esteem. Kung Fu Panda moves at such a cracking pace, there is little time to reflect on the failings of the story. Instead, we are swept along by a mixture of silly, shtick, slapstick comedy, crouching tiger-style action spectacle and Hans Zimmer's rip-roaring score. A number of the big-name vocal talents involved, especially Jackie Chan, are reduced to minor supporting characters which may upset some fans but is unlikely to trouble the target family audience. Little demands are placed upon Angelina Jolie as the proud warrior tigress, but Jack Black is a blustering, frantic delight as Po and is beautifully matched by Dustin Hoffman, who brings a dry, deadpan comic timing to the role of his long-suffering mentor. The heart of the film is built around the relationship that develops between these two, and the highlights include a Rocky-style training session using food as a reward. Naturally, Po only starts to improve during a fiercely contested battle for the last dumpling on the plate. The animation does find time to balance the breakneck forward momentum of the narrative with some beautiful scenes of misty mountains tops, trees with blood-red foliage and dark, shadowy moments in the fortress where Tai Lung has been held. It is as if the spirit of recent Zhang Yimou spectaculars have info-rammed this warm and very likeable Hollywood fare. The world has already fallen in love with a grumpy green ogre, Shrek, and a lugubrious mammoth, Ice Age, so it should have no trouble clasping a podgy, self-deprecating panda to its collective bosom. Kung Fu Panda ticks all the boxes for must-see family entertainment, and the cute factor is only enhanced by the vocal expertise of Jack Black and the fact that this particular rotund panda has delusions of martial arts grandeur. The film's status as the summer's animation front-runner is only likely to be challenged by WALL. But until then, this is the kind of surefire Hollywood package that will generate global returns on the level of Horton Hears a Who and possibly beyond. DreamWorks have gone all Oriental for their latest animated venture, embracing every imaginable cliché from dragons and firecrackers to peach tree blossom and pagodas. Even the familiar DreamWorks logo has been given a makeover. The storyline of finding the hero inside yourself is no less obvious, but is given a sprightly freshness by the breathless pace, attention to detail and sheer good fun on offer. It might not be an instant classic, but it is extremely entertaining and a definite crowd pleaser. Jack Black is perfectly cast as Po, a clumsy, overweight panda who works in the family's noodle restaurant and harbours a fan's enthusiasm for martial arts and its greatest practitioners, the legendary Furious Five Tigress, Jolie, Crane, Cross, Mantis, Seth Rogen, Viper, Liu and Monkey, Chan. When the time comes to select the Dragon Warrior, those five are overlooked in favour of Po, much to the astonishment of their Obi-Wan Kenobi-style mentor Master Shifu, Hoffman. When the dreaded Tai Lung, McShane, escapes from prison after 20 years of incarceration, Po has to fulfil his destiny and save the day even with his bad back. Lack of puff and low self-esteem, Kung Fu Panda moves at such a cracking pace, there is little time to reflect on the failings of the story. Instead, we are swept along by a mixture of silly shtick, slapstick comedy, crouching tiger-style action spectacle and Hans Zimmer's rip-roaring score. A number of the big-name vocal talents involved, especially Jackie Chan, are reduced to minor supporting characters which may upset some fans but is unlikely to trouble the target family audience. Little demands are placed upon Angelina Jolie as the proud warrior tigress, but Jack Black is a blustering, frantic delight as Po and is beautifully matched by Dustin Hoffman, who brings a dry, deadpan comic timing to the role of his long-suffering mentor. The heart of the film is built around the relationship that develops between these two, and the highlights include a Rocky-style training session using food as a reward. Naturally, Po only starts to improve during a fiercely contested battle for the last dumpling on the plate. The animation does find time to balance the breakneck forward momentum of the narrative with some beautiful scenes of misty mountains tops, trees with blood-red foliage and dark, shadowy moments in the fortress where Tai Lung has been held. It is as if the spirit of recent Zhang Yimou spectaculars have info-rummed this warm and very likeable Hollywood fare. Po loves to play with action figures of the legendary Furious Five, Tigress, Crane, Mantis, Viper and Monkey. He dreams of being in their ranks as a true deliverer of kung fu awesomeness, but alas, he is only a chubby, stumble-footed and easily winded panda, not a lightning-fast, disciplined martial artist. So he's stuck in the family noodle business. When word goes out that a dragon warrior will be chosen to fulfill legend and defend the Jade Kingdom from the dreaded martial arts master Tai Lung, Po can't contain his excitement. With a great deal of effort, he lugs his considerable heft up the hundreds of steps to the Jade Palace to see who will land the great honour. Turns out he lands it, after accidentally crashing the tryout party. Nobody can believe it. Especially not the Furious Five and their Kung Fu Master Shifu. But since the enemy is already on his way, they have to do something. If Tai Lung gets his hands on the lauded Dragon Scroll, he will surely be powerful enough to rule the world. Po must do whatever it takes to face the fearsome and treacherous foe. Right after lunch, that is. Positive Elements Po wants to honour his father even though he is drawn to martial arts and not to the family business. When Dad realises where Po's gifts lie, he embraces his son and gives him his blessing. They both express their love for one another. Doing your best and believing in yourself is a theme that runs throughout the movie. Master Shifu doesn't believe that Po is the right choice to defend the kingdom, and initially he tries to get him to quit. But when the older and wiser Oogway asks him to train and believe in Po, Shifu submits to his mentor's request and gives the task his all. Later, Shifu risks his life to give the townspeople time to escape Tai Lung's wrath. And the Furious Five, though great warriors themselves, honour Shifu's request that they take care of the innocent rather than fight. Master Shifu raised Tai Lung from a small cub and loved him like a son. Before the two battle, the Elder Master speaks of his pride for Tai Lung. But he goes on to apologise for how that same pride negatively impacted the angry fighter, Spiritual. Elements this being a martial arts story set in China. Characters are influenced by the Eastern spirituality around them. Oogway, the philosophising turtle master. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why they call it the present. Has a dream that the imprisoned Tai Lung will escape his bonds and return to the kingdom, which comes true. He also believes that there are no accidents and that the universe has delivered Po to be their dragon warrior. When sensing that his end is near, Oogway dissolves into a swirl of fruit tree petals that float into the sky. After being chosen as the dragon warrior, Po is ushered into the sacred hall of warriors. There he finds an urn that is supposedly filled with the souls of a defeated army. And when he accidentally breaks the urn, a glowing puff of smoke is freed. Po and Master Shifu visit a small mountain lake called the Pool of Sacred Tears that the Master says is the birthplace of Kung Fu. When seen from above, the pool looks like the ancient yin and yang symbol. In a dream, Po sets off to fight 10,000 demons of Demon Mountain. Spoiler warning. A great deal of spiritual mystery revolves around the Dragon Scroll. Many believe that when a great warrior reads the scroll, he will be imbued with magical superpowers. In truth, when the scroll is finally unrolled, it has nothing to do with magic at all. Sexual and romantic content when Po clamps 2 noodle bowls to his chest. It gives the impression that he's wearing a bikini top. Violent content Oogway is the only character who dies. But the Kung Fu fighting is constant and furious, though often presented in a humorous manner. Beginning the starstruck Po's training, Shifu tells him, "The only souvenirs we collect here are bloody knuckles and broken bones." He proceeds to oversee Po's preliminary pummeling at the hands of the Furious Five, as well as mechanical creations designed to poke, prod, whack, thwack, toss, tilt, twirl and burn would-be Kung Fu fighters. There are a few battles with Tai Lung that, while not really scary, could seem fairly intense to very young viewers. He's a pretty powerful looking, always snarling presence, much like Shere Khan from the Jungle Book, only with roundhouse kicks. In one case, Tai Lung escapes from prison and battles numerous rhino captors with spectacular kicks, leaps and throws. The rhinos are hit in slow motion with their own spears and clubs, and the Furious Five battle the villain on a whiplashing rope bridge suspended above a bottomless chasm. It looks like someone could fall to their death at any moment. The bad guy paralyzes several of the five with a nerve pinch. Tai Lung fights with Master Shifu and the two hit and kick each other with acrobatic swirls. Tai Lung throws blade weapons at his former master and Shifu knocks them aside. Shifu hits a stone pillar and is knocked unconscious. Spoiler warning, the film culminates with a huge fight between Po and Tai Lung, which is played for laughs all the way through. Fur flies. A building collapses. Craters are blasted into the earth as bodies crash down upon it. A nuclear-level shockwave expands outward when the final blow lands. When it's over, Po runs to Shifu's side and it appears that the Kung Fu master has died. But he soon points out that he's really just getting some much-needed rest. Shifu calls Po an idiot. One of the Furious Five says that the panda has a fat butt, flabby arms and a ridiculous belly. Later, when commenting on his performance, Po says, "I sucked more than anyone in the history of sucking." Other noteworthy elements, a passing reference is made to gambling. Po straps himself and a bunch of fireworks rockets to a chair. When he lights them, he's blasted high into the sky. When Po first shows up, the Furious Five are not happy about his presence. One says, "You're a disgrace to Jade Palace and everything we stand for." Po is hit in the crotch while training and exclaims, "My tenders!" While being hit by Tai Lung, the panda's belly is jiggling so hard that he laughs. "I'm going to pee." Conclusion: when I walked into the screening for Kung Fu Panda, my expectations were low. The movie's trailer looked only so-so, and I was anticipating that the theatre full of kids and I would be bombarded with heavy-handed Eastern mysticism, pummeled by imitable fist-to-face, bash and smash, and, based on comedian Jack Black's past film choices, handed a noodle bowl full of poo-poo humour. I was pleasantly surprised. I found a colourful garden where I half expected a bog. Lush watercolour visuals and fun characters instead of flat animation and bland storytelling. A few kids will certainly come out of the theatre itching to try out some of the roundhouse kicking, panda, belly bouncing bedlam they've seen on screen. But if the little roughhousing rascals a colleague of mine saw after the film are any indication, the moves they'll try are going to be of the friendly variety, not headlocks and punches. Previously stated spirituality is definitely present, but it's as spare as a martial arts cartoon set in ancient China will reasonably allow, and the humour runs clear and fresh. In the film's production notes, co-director Mark Osborne had this to say: "It was important to all of us from the start that Kung Fu Panda would have a theme, a positive message that we really believed in. We wanted it to be a fun experience loaded with comedy and great action, but we also wanted there to be a takeaway that we all believed was a good one. To that end, the story projects a well-worn follow your heart and believe in yourself theme. But it also encourages finding your own strengths, being disciplined, learning from those who are older and wiser, protecting the innocent and standing up for what's right, even when you're afraid you might fail. Oh, yeah. There's one more thing this film encourages: hordes of cuddly stuffed animals forever frozen in kung fu poses. After spending more than 2 decades touring, directing, writing and producing for Christian theatre and radio, most recently for Adventures in Odyssey, which he still contributes to, Bob joined the plugged-in staff to help us focus more heavily on video games. He is also one of our primary movie reviewers. I'll admit that I didn't exactly have very high expectations for Kung Fu Panda. It just seemed like such an outlandish proposition to have Jack Black provide the voice to animated panda, let alone one that would go around beating the tar out of bad guys using advanced martial arts. I figured that it would just be yet another animated movie that dangled from a thin plot by an even thinner thread. Thankfully, I was very pleasantly surprised by Kung Fu Panda. Created by the good people at DreamWorks Animation, Kung Fu Panda follows the tale of a blundering idiot of a panda named Po, voiced by Jack Black. He was raised to sell noodles alongside his goose father, Mr. Ping, but this is not the life that he desired for himself. He has an ambition to become a great kung fu master, and through some strange stroke of luck, he comes to be earmarked as the Dragon Warrior, a distinction that has not been bestowed for 1,000 years. The comedy in Kung Fu Panda, for the most part, is of the slapstick variety. We laugh as Po makes an idiot of himself, crashing in every which direction and getting abused by the various training exercises. You shouldn't expect much in terms of sophisticated humour in this film, because you just won't get it. Instead, you will see Po struggle to lug his noodle cart up a long flight of stone stairs, only to see that he has barely made it 5 steps. You will watch as he gets his ass handed to him by a tiny insect. But that's okay, because that's the kind of movie that Kung Fu Panda is. Serving as Po's master is Master Shifu, a red panda voiced by Dustin Hoffman. I found the naming of this character to be a little strange because it is ultimately redundant. Shifu literally translates as master or teacher in Chinese. I also found that Master Shifu was some strange blend of Master Splinter from the Ninja Turtles and the furry protagonist from Gremlins. In fact, it seems that Kung Fu Panda has borrowed many elements from other popular films and television shows. The awkwardness and clumsiness of Po in his attempts to learn Kung Fu are not unlike those that we witnessed in Beverly Hills Ninja with the late Chris Farley. The way that things seem to work out for him without making a distinct effort is very Winnie the Pooh-like in nature. Even the evil Tai Lung, who serves as the primary villain in the film, made me think of Scar from The Lion King. Despite being a little generic and unoriginal in its approach, Kung Fu Panda has enough substance to warrant the price of admission. The tale is heartwarming, and Jack Black actually does a reasonable job portraying an ill-fit kung fu master of a fat panda. The action scenes are surprisingly intense, and the physical comedy will easily keep you amused for the full 92 minutes. The all-star cast, which includes Jackie Chan, Angelina Jolie, Michael Clark Duncan, Lucy Liu, Seth Rogen and Wayne Knight, among others, is pretty impressive too. Animation's greatest quality resides in bringing the impossible to film without the audience noticing strings or seeing through sometimes transparent special effects wizardry. When fantastical events occur on screen, cartoons serve them up-drawn with the same hands or the now standard computers that constructed the entire environment, integrating a spotless self-contained verisimilitude into every aspect of the film. With animation, the world is as you make it, existing in its own unreality. What other format could have conceived Kung Fu Panda, a movie wherein a chubby panda bear moves faster than Bruce Lee in all his martial arts glory? Po, the overweight panda in question, is voiced by the similarly round Jack Black, who lends his displaced character an appropriate lovable loser quality. Working for his noodle-peddling father, Mr. Ping, voice of James Hong, a goose, Po almost certainly has some identity issues stemming from his biologically impossible parentage. He dreams of something more than waiting tables, such as becoming a kung fu warrior of epic proportions, like those training at the temple, high up on a nearby mountain. Separated by thousands of steps below in the Valley of Peace, Po is resigned to noodles until an ancient tortoise, Master Oogway, voiced by Randall Duck Kim, announces he will choose the Dragon Warrior, a prophesied kung fu master of incomparable skill. The chosen one's task will be a head-to-head fight against the evil Tai Lung, Ian McShane, perfectly cast for the Dragon Scroll, which is said to contain the answers to unparalleled power. Surely, the foretold champion will be one of the Furious Five trained by Master Shifu, a gruff-voiced Dustin Hoffman, whose names simply illustrate their animal designations. Tigress, Angelina Jolie; Mantis, Seth Rogen; Monkey, Jackie Chan; Crane, David Cross; and Viper, Lucy Liu. But when Po bursts in on the selection ceremony, the wise Oogway shakily points his finger to the film's unlikely hero. We realise celebrities populate the cast of talking animals to a superfluous degree when Jackie Chan and Seth Rogen have barely a handful of lines each. With distinct voices like McShane, Black, and Hoffman assigning audible personality to their roles, I can't help but wonder why DreamWorks sought names for every part, no matter how inconsequential. Inspired by recent ventures into martial arts fantasy like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and House of Flying Daggers, production designer Raymond Zibak fills the screen with picturesque locales and Chinese culture. One of the film's many battles takes place high above the clouds on mountainous peaks, suspension ladders connecting the lot. Tai Lung's wowing prison escape occurs in underground caverns, lit with an ominous flare-red glow. And the most impressive exchange comes about when Po and Shifu clash over the last dumpling. The action is familiar to recent martial arts adventures like The Forbidden Kingdom, with hero and villain sparring gracefully across rooftops, springing high into the clouds, and then smashing into the ground with effortless control. Po, however, bounces about the screen emitting the hollow sounds of an exercise ball, not so much graceful like his fellow warriors, but inelegantly lucky as objects rebound from his flab into an enemy's face. Co-directors Mark Osborne and John Stevenson delay the action's speed occasionally, reminding us in slow motion how absurd Po's gyrations are, and putting that last riotous touch on the film's ongoing fat humour. DreamWorks Animation remains the distant number 2 behind Pixar. Their output hasn't quite achieved that beautiful balance of narrative and visuality Pixar has mastered and which elevates their crop to high art. Nevertheless, DreamWorks titles like B-Movie and Over the Hedge inspire hearty belly laughs and the occasional moment of visual splendour. But DreamWorks seems determined to construct their stories, humour and animation style to meet the needs of younger viewers, while anyone, from the youngest child to the stodgiest adult, can take pleasure in Finding Nemo or The Incredibles. The same cannot be said about each of the aforementioned DreamWorks cartoons, each seemingly deficient of any lasting emotional connection to the viewer. Kung Fu Panda ends up being a lot of fun, which is no doubt all your children require. Colours pop with every ounce of iconography and imagination Chinese mysticism can muster. Intense animal battles offer surprising involvement, and the physical humour doesn't overstay its welcome. DreamWorks is slowly elevating their company with every new film they release, needing only to attain the inexhaustible heart Pixar effortlessly achieves on each of their animated pictures before becoming their equal. There's not much to Kung Fu Panda, and it's gratingly predictable, but it's also entertaining, colourful, funny and easy to enjoy. Would it be too much to ask for a cinematic ceasefire when it comes to martial arts movies? In the past 3 months, we've been treated to Never Back Down, Forbidden Kingdom, Red Belt, and now Kung Fu Panda, the mildest, only PG rated and lone animated one of the bunch. It's an action comedy with characters who look like models for Webkins, some mystical and self-esteem elements that may elude younger moviegoers, and a tangle of species and celebrity voices that could have adults scratching their heads. For instance, a goose is the father of a panda, and a Kung Fu master Red's panda, with the voice of Dustin Hoffman, adopted a snow leopard that somehow picked up a British accent thanks to Ian McShane. And they all live in some part of China, ruled by a wise ancient tortoise named Oogway and populated, in part, by rabbits and pigs who look like they escaped from another movie. In other words, it's far less coherent or entertaining than Horton Hears a Who or B-Movie. Although the animation is expertly detailed, whether the scene calls for a flowering peach tree, a swaying rope bridge, or a prison carved out of a mountain in snowy outer Mongolia, in Kung Fu Panda, Jack Black speaks for Po, a klutzy panda who works in his family's noodle shop but dreams of Kung Fu fighting. When he learns that a dragon warrior is being named, Po accidentally launches himself into the ceremony where, much to everyone's surprise, including his, he is chosen to fulfill the ancient prophecy and bring peace to the valley. Master Shifu, Hoffman, had assumed one of his furious 5 students' tigress. Angelina Jolie, Crane, David Cross, Mantis, Seth Rogen, Viper, Lucy Liu and Monkey, Jackie Chan, would earn that honour. But when the villainous snow leopard escapes from prison, Po must panda up and undergo the rigorous training he and others thought impossible. Jack Black makes Po another in a long line of hapless and sympathetic heroes who has his rocky training montage, but the movie veers off in too many directions, following too many characters, to wit, 1 cuddly panda, 5 kung fu superstars, 2 elders, 1 villain, 1 estranged father-son pairing that comes to blows, 1 that leads to understanding and pride. Its ultimate lesson about believing in yourself is all well and good. Children at a preview audience seem to respond more to the funny lines. "Stop it! I'm gonna pee," Po says, while being pummeled. Rather than the sage Oogway philosophy about how yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. I strongly advise everyone not to read this if you have not read. Watch the book, movie, spoilers, but this review does not give away the ending. There is a famous saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Po is an extremely clumsy giant panda that idolises the Furious 5. Mantis, Viper, Monkey, Tigress and Crane, who are the greatest kung fu quintet in the Valley of Peace. He longs to fight villains with the Furious 5. And it seems like the only thing stopping him is that he has to help his father with his noodle shop instead of pursuing his dream. So Po decides to attend the Kung Fu tournament where the Furious 5 are competing for the right to be the Dragon Warrior, who will be chosen by Grandmaster Oogway. However, Po is late and doesn't make it in time, so to get in he straps himself to a chair with firecrackers and blasts himself into the tournament, just as Oogway is choosing the Dragon Warrior. Oogway points at Po. Po is the Dragon Warrior. Unfortunately for the literally Furious 5 and their equally mad mentor, Shifu, Oogway's decision is final because, as he says, there are no mistakes. Shifu stubbornly believes that Oogway has made a mistake, and tries his best to try to make Po quit Kung Fu. While this is happening, Oogway foresees that Tai Lung, an evil Bengal tiger, would escape prison. Shifu decides to ignore this prediction, but Tai Lung does indeed escape, and his goal is to become the Dragon Warrior, and therefore receive the Dragon Scroll. Tai Lung is ruthless and will do whatever it takes to become the Dragon Warrior. After receiving the news that Tai Lung has escaped, Shifu confides in Oogway, his former mentor, that he does not think Po will be ready to fight Tai Lung. Oogway tells him that he has to believe in Po because some people grow differently and you must nurture them and believe in them no matter what. Later, Shifu learns that Po can perform impressive Kung Fu if he's motivated by food. By doing this, Shifu and Po learn Kung Fu step by step using food as motivation, but meanwhile the Furious Five set out on a journey to defeat Tai Lung themselves. However, they are defeated by Tai Lung's nerve strikes, and it becomes clear that Po is the only one that can defeat Tai Lung. But the Dragon Scroll is blank. It has nothing written on it. Believing that the Dragon Scroll has no meaning, otherwise it would have helped Po defeat Tai Lung, Shifu instructs Po and the Furious Five to evacuate the townspeople out of the Valley of Peace while he takes on Tai Lung himself. But Po learns that the blank scroll means that things are special if people believe they are. Po goes back to save Shifu from Tai Lung and distracts Tai Lung with new Kung Fu techniques, using body fat to block nerve strikes. Tai Lung momentarily gains the Dragon Scroll but is unable to understand what it really means. Meanwhile, Shifu is in critical condition and Tai Lung is bearing down on Po. Will it be a happy ending after all? This was an amazing movie. Its humour and heartwarming story will appeal to all ages. And this was a heartfelt movie that isn't just about martial arts. It's about how believing in someone can change. Well, everything. It also shows that everything isn't just black or white, or just good and evil. Take Tai Lung, for example. He became even more corrupted when Oogway didn't approve him being the Dragon Warrior because he sensed evil in his heart. I mean, all the characters are very well developed and have many fakagads. Tigress might appear cold and aloof on the outside, but she has a long and hard history, and you might discover a lot of things about her, like a lot of sadness. This movie made me cry multiple times. It's not quite an emotional movie, but the backstories are especially tear-jerking. But, well, I guess all that's left to say is that I loved this emotional, amazing movie that has positive messages, humour, a heartwarming story, and very developed characters. It's not often that a movie manages to be humorous, heartwarming, and just downright fun all at once. When I first saw Kung Fu Panda, I was absolutely blown away. Nothing in the marketing, including the film's very title, excited me or hinted at anything better than DreamWorks' last couple of releases. I've mentioned that How to Train Your Dragon and The Prince of Egypt are among my favourite DreamWorks animated films, and my favourite movies in general. I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk about my other favourite film from the consistently inconsistent studio, Kung Fu Panda. Let's dive in. Kung Fu Panda follows Po, Jack Black, Panda, working at his father's noodle shop and dreaming of practicing Kung Fu with the Furious Five. The Five are a group of elite fighters trained by Master Shifu, Dustin Hoffman, one of whom is destined to become the Dragon Warrior and bring peace to the valley. Master Oogway, Randall Duck Kim, has a vision of Shifu's former pupil Tai Lung breaking out of prison, prompting the choosing of the Dragon Warrior to take place immediately. Po ends up in the right place at the right time and his dreams come true. But can a fat, untrained panda stop Tai Lung and save the valley? This is a pretty standard hero's journey, and while I appreciate the simplicity of the story, it's not the movie's greatest strength. I'm a firm believer that a movie's quality has nothing to do with the concept of its story and everything to do with how the filmmakers execute their vision. Kung Fu Panda is one of the movies that brought me to this conclusion. As I said earlier, the idea of a martial artist panda didn't appeal to me. I've also seen movies that sounded great but disappointed me, as I'm sure we all have, like Incredibles 2 and Thor Ragnarok. Kung Fu Panda is actually the main reason I wanted to talk about the DreamWorks movies, specifically why this movie works so well. I can't overstate how much the performances make Kung Fu Panda work. Jack Black is funny as Po, but he's equally as insecure and vulnerable. I love that our introduction to the film's protagonist comes through his dream of being an awesome warrior who stands alongside his heroes. It's a highly entertaining scene, and it tells us exactly what Po wants, making his real introduction extremely sad. We now see him as a clumsy, flabby restaurant worker, honestly relatable, who can't even get out of bed on time. I also really like Po's dad, James Hong, and their relationship. Dad wants Po to become a noodle chef like him and runs with it when Po dishonestly claims he was dreaming about noodles. However, he doesn't force his life choices onto Po. Once Po confesses what he really wants, his father is unusually understanding and supportive for a single parent in a family movie. It doesn't usually go too well for the protagonist or the parent in stories like this, and I like that they just made Po's dad a nice guy who wants his son to be happy. Dad isn't in the first Kung Fu Panda very much, but he and his relationship with Po are developed further in the sequels. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Po's eventual masters, Shifu and Oogway. This may be a hot take, but Master Oogway is my favourite character in Kung Fu Panda. His dialogue is too good to describe, and I love his personality. He reminds me of Yoda, saying things that initially seem silly or nonsensical but end up providing immeasurable wisdom. Randall Duck Kim's delivery is spot on as well. At times, he reads his lines in a way that suggests Oogway is almost absent-minded, like when he just agrees with Po that he's a loser and nobody likes him. But these exchanges lead to some of my favourite moments in the film. Oogway's passing is my favourite sequence for the dynamite visuals, brilliant dialogue and swelling musical score. Shifu was Oogway's apprentice and now the master of Po and the Furious Five. But he's not ready for this task at the beginning of the film. Dustin Hoffman is great in general, and he doesn't disappoint here as Po's reluctant tutor. Shifu has at least as much doubt in Po as the latter has in himself, leading to conflict and Po's initial failures. Before he dies, Master Oogway compares Po to a peach seed to illustrate to Shifu that he must have faith and encourage Po. Of course, Shifu completely misunderstands this advice and tries to reassert his control over the situation by whipping Po into shape. Only when he witnesses firsthand how effective Po can be in his own unique way does Shifu truly start to get it. Even still, Shifu doesn't comprehend how much Po is capable of because he still thinks of the training in terms of reshaping Po into the Dragon Warrior. What Shifu can't understand until it's almost too late is that Po doesn't need to become the Dragon Warrior. He already is exactly what the Dragon Warrior needs to be. Po's metamorphosis isn't a physical one, but one of finding self-confidence and awareness. Ian McShane voices Tai Lung, and he really brings the goods. I never hear much about Tai Lung or this performance, and I think it's because he got overshadowed by Gary Oldman's villain in the second movie and J.K. Simmons in the third. I can understand this, but it's frustrating. Tai Lung isn't the most interesting or sympathetic villain. The vocal performance is outstanding, and he's extraordinarily threatening and badass looking. It's also important to note that Tai Lung's significance lies in his relationship to Shifu as much as in the damage he can do. Tai Lung is the only pupil Shifu ever really loved, seeing him as a son. He told Tai Lung that he was destined for greatness and deserved the Dragon Scroll, which belongs to the future Dragon Warrior. When Master Oogway saw the dark future ahead of Tai Lung, he wasn't chosen to be the warrior, sending him on the warpath. What I love about this backstory and relationship is that it's told visually through a bold, unforgettable flashback. The editing and timing in this film take common ideas and create a truly unique experience. The Furious Five aren't that interesting in the first movie, and they just represent another challenge for Po. They're jealous and bitter of his status as Oogway's chosen warrior, especially Tigress, Angelina Jolie. This being said, their vocal performances are very good, and they serve their purpose. You can tell they put the emphasis on Po, the masters, and Tai Lung, and in my opinion, that was absolutely the right call. These creative choices result in greater emotional impact than diving too deep into Tigress emotions would have. As is, I think the flashback to Shifu scolding a young tigress, despite a wonderful display of her talents, serves the story well. Sometimes less is more. As for the visuals and music in Kung Fu Panda, where do I start? John Powell and Hans Zimmer composed the original score for Kung Fu Panda, and if that's not a winning team, I just don't know what is. The musical themes in this movie are absolutely gorgeous. The score is epic when it needs to be and introspective when it serves the story. I can hear the piece from the beginning, as well as the tune that plays when Oogway dies, in my head whenever I think about this film. That's because those two scenes are diametrically opposed in tone and narrative purpose, but they both say something about why this is a great movie. This movie excels at balancing action, comedy and quiet, thoughtful moments so well it boggles the mind. The visuals in Kung Fu Panda are wonderful as well. Personally, I like the flat-rendered opening best of all. This is truly a unique, striking scene that grabs your attention right away. The more conventional CG designs are great too though, and the characters of Kung Fu Panda are wildly expressive. I consider this DreamWorks' best looking CG film up to its release, and it still looks pretty damn good now. I think they did themselves a favour in leaving humans out this time, because the fur design and movement are something special, and honestly, DreamWorks' CGI human characters looked pretty unsettling until 2010-ish. The action and fight choreography are truly something to behold. Whenever I see really good action in an animated movie, I tend to think about either The Incredibles or Kung Fu Panda. The movements of the characters are fluid and blink and you'll miss it fast. Similar to what I said about Blood of Zeus, this movie is a big shot of adrenaline, much like the story itself. Kung Fu Panda's messages are simple and well worn. The movie weaves its messaging into the story and dialogue so well that I wasn't sure what they were getting at until almost the end of my first watch. Po being enough in and of himself begins to make sense as you see more of what he can accomplish when properly motivated. And this movie isn't anti-training and preparation, quite the opposite. Po is earnest and a hard worker despite what people see on the outside. He's willing to do whatever Master Shifu instructs if the latter can only be patient and understanding. Po must become the best version of himself rather than trying to be like the other warriors. The film frequently refers to the secret ingredient in Po's dad's soup, only for him to tell Po there is no secret ingredient. This makes for a humorous moment as Po and the audience think he's going to tell Po he's adopted. But it also ties into the movie's themes and Po's character journey. Kung Fu Panda has relatively simple dialogue, but the way it all comes together is just brilliant in the end. I absolutely adore Kung Fu Panda. This series got a lot of praise after the second movie's release, but I never hear about it anymore, and I think that's a real shame. I'll get into what I thought of the sequels later, but the original Kung Fu Panda is one of my favourite movies and one that always lifts my spirits. We can't all be the Dragon Warrior, but what Po learned rings true. There is no secret ingredient. No matter how hard it seems, you just have to strive to be the best version of yourself. I would recommend this movie to anybody because if you're willing to look beyond the surface, there's something here for everyone. Although, honestly, even the surface is gorgeous and amazingly inventive. A lot of the charm has been deep fried out of Kung Fu Panda, a not uncommon malady among successful kids' cartoon franchises that have produced multiple films and multiple seasons of a TV series. 3 credited writers and the vocal stylings of Jack Black and Awkwafina can't render Kung Fu Panda 4 into anything but semi-organised repetition, recycling and random riffs that rarely manage to interrupt the tedium or flatlining one-liners. I wish I had a dumpling for every time a villain told me how much we have in common. It's like a later Transformers or Marvel movie, an umpteenth instalment of your average action anime, where fan service and endless fights are all anybody involved can dream up. Our dragon warrior, roly-poly panda Po Black, is in his prime, cocksure in fights and enjoying his celebrity. That makes this the perfect time to choose your successor, Master Shifu, the wee red panda, Dustin Hoffman, in tones. Po is reluctant to take the next step in your journey, senior spiritual management for the Valley of Peace. But that's of little consequence when old foes like the tiger Tai Lung, Ian McShane, come back from the spirit world, because a new foe, the chameleon of Juniper City, Viola Davis, is summoning them and adding to her powers to theirs to take down the dragon warrior. A thieving ninja fox, Awkwafina, is arm-twisted into helping Po. His two dads, James Hong and Bryan Cranston, whine and fret over that. But there's nothing for it but to face a new enemy by making their way to Juniper City. That choose a successor business, all about, you know when you know you've found the right warrior, will have to wait. Fortune cookie, one-liners abound. Every step leaves a footprint, no matter how small. It is easier to hang on to the life you know than reach for the life you don't. It's never too late to do the right thing. There are a few chuckles here and there, but the right thing, as far as this movie is concerned, is more and more comical brawling. It's never quite a 9-year-old's idea of cool and never as funny as one would hope. As Black's Master Po asks in the film's most telling line, "Where's the skadoosh?" The biggest laugh comes from the skipper whose Chinese junk sails to Juniper City on a regular run. Po negotiates with the pelican in charge, he thinks. Then the pelican opens its mouth and the real captain turns out to be a fish floating in seawater in the bird's bill. The comic Ronnie Chieng, voicing the fish, makes more amusement out of that sight gag than anybody else here manages. DreamWorks built its animation empire out of smart-mouthed, sight-gagged character comedies like Shrek and Puss in Boots and Madagascar. It's not shocking that they came back to the Kung Fu Panda, as, like Pixar, they've hit the wall when it comes to new ideas. But even they'd have to admit that cashing in on a time-tested intellectual property may make business sense, and that Po & Co. deserved better than this. Rating, cartoon violence, rude humour cast. The voices of Jack Black, Awkwafina, Viola Davis, James Hong, Bryan Cranston, Ronnie Chieng, Ian McShane, Kei Hai Kwan and Dustin Hoffman. Credits. Directed by Mike Mitchell and Stephanie Stein. Scripted by Jonathan Eibel, Glenn Berger and Darren Lemke. A DreamWorks Universal release. I'll admit that I didn't exactly have very high expectations for Kung Fu Panda. It just seemed like such an outlandish proposition to have Jack Black provide the voice to animated panda, let alone one that would go around beating the tar out of bad guys using advanced martial arts. I figured that it would just be yet another animated movie that dangled from a thin plot by an even thinner thread. Thankfully, I was very pleasantly surprised by Kung Fu Panda. Created by the good people at DreamWorks Animation, Kung Fu Panda follows the tale of a blundering idiot of a panda named Po, voiced by Jack Black. He was raised to sell noodles alongside his goose father, Mr. Ping, but this is not the life that he desired for himself. He has an ambition to become a great kung fu master, and through some strange stroke of luck, he comes to be earmarked as the Dragon Warrior, a distinction that has not been bestowed for 1,000 years. The comedy in Kung Fu Panda, for the most part, is of the slapstick variety. We laugh as Po makes an idiot of himself, crashing in every which direction and getting abused by the various training exercises. You shouldn't expect much in terms of sophisticated humour in this film, because you just won't get it. Instead, you will see Po struggle to lug his noodle cart up a long flight of stone stairs, only to see that he has barely made it 5 steps. You will watch as he gets his ass handed to him by a tiny insect. But that's okay, because that's the kind of movie that Kung Fu Panda is. Serving as pose master is Master Shifu, a red panda voiced by Dustin Hoffman. I found the naming of this character to be a little strange because it is ultimately redundant. Shifu literally translates as master or teacher in Chinese. I also found that Master Shifu was some strange blend of Master Splinter from the Ninja Turtles and the furry protagonist from Gremlins. In fact, it seems that Kung Fu Panda has borrowed many elements from other popular films and television shows. The awkwardness and clumsiness of Po in his attempts to learn Kung Fu are not unlike those that we witnessed in Beverly Hills Ninja with the late Chris Farley. The way that things seem to work out for him without making a distinct effort is very Winnie the Pooh-like in nature. Even the evil Tai Lung, who serves as the primary villain in the film, made me think of Scar from The Lion King. Despite being a little generic and unoriginal in its approach, Kung Fu Panda has enough substance to warrant the price of admission. The tale is heartwarming, and Jack Black actually does a reasonable job portraying an ill-fit Kung Fu master of a fat panda. The action scenes are surprisingly intense, and the physical comedy will easily keep you amused for the full 92 minutes. The all-star cast, which includes Jackie Chan, Angelina Jolie, Michael Clarke Duncan, Lucy Liu, Seth Rogen and Wayne Knight, among others, is pretty impressive too.